Hi, I'm Pascal Bicotte from Russell Reynolds, a leadership advisory firm. Today I'm in San Diego at the Biomanufacturing World Summit 2024. I have the privilege of interviewing 5 great leaders from the biotech industry. Hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining Biomanufacturing World Summit 24. Jerry, we're going to start with you, and please introduce yourself, but also start us on what's on your mind right now in your very important role in your organization.
Thanks, Pascal. It's great to be here. My name is Jerry Murray. I'm Senior Vice President of Process Development at Amgen. At Amgen, we're really in a global position with a lot of fast-growing products. And so our strategy of volume-driven growth is requiring really high productive processes and high throughput of processes. So a lot of our focus right now is how do we get the most productive processes and the most out of our production processes. So optimizing that, continuous improvement obviously plays a very big important role there, but also innovative new technologies, harnessing the digital revolution that's around us are things that we're focused on right now.
Brilliant. Tonton, what do you say?
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. And my name is Tonton Wang, and I'm the global head of technical development in Roche and Genentech. Okay. So in terms of our business, and actually if you have been paying attention, we just rolled out very first time and one pharma strategy. And this is truly end-to-end across Roche, because if you understand Roche, how we operate before, we have early research and we have late research, right? Sometimes it's not always aligned in terms of our strategies, the diseases, therapeutic areas. So this is actually great opportunity to fully align end-to-end. So what does that mean to CMC? Our organization is to truly understand where the therapeutic area we're going to go in. A few years back, we were known as an oncology product company, maybe. But today, we're in 5 therapeutic areas. We just actually purchased a Kama therapeutic company. We're in the incretin space now. That's a very different business, right? And so there's some work to do, but I'm excited, I would say. So multitude of challenges. And as Jerry said earlier, our business is always evolving, right? And so we'll have more external innovation come to us. And so that's what CMC is actually keen to partnership as well.
It'll be a busy next few years.
Yeah.
Looks like. Chris?
It'll be a busy next few years, yeah. Chris Horan, I'm the Chief Technical Officer at Artiva Biotherapeutics here in San Diego. We're a cell therapy company. I think the challenge with a startup is staying in business, right? Is getting to that next value inflection. And in cell therapy, CMC plays a big role in that. So it's how do you build an organizational capability, support a super fast-track clinical program and not be on the critical path of that, and really, develop people in a company that doesn't have the breadth of funds that my former life in big pharma provided to me. Because turnover is very painful in any company, but it's especially painful when the team is small and we really have lots of work to do in a short period of time.
That's a good point. We'll get back to that, to talent. Anya.
Pascal, good to be here again. And for the audience, my name is Anya Hanley. I am the lead for technical operations and quality at Vir Bio. And Vir, I think you could describe as a mid-size biotech company. We had the amazing opportunity to launch sotrovimab during the COVID pandemic. And since then, we've been focused on our late-stage pipeline, specifically hepatitis and hepatitis D. We're very excited about the opportunity to treat patients with this medicine. And we've recently just come through the annual AASLD liver meeting, where our team showcased our latest data, which is super exciting. And then for tech ops, we're very focused on preparing for those registrational trials and ensuring we have supply for patients, and also getting ready for BLA in the not too distant future. So a lot of late stage focus. In parallel, we've recently announced the acquisition of a very exciting new modality in the oncology area. These are bispecific T-cell engagers with a polypeptide mask, targeting many of the common cancer targets that are so challenging to address and minimize cytokine release syndrome. And we as a team, therefore, have late stage and early stage opportunities. And we need to do this at this stage, given our given our sotrovimab revenue has stopped, we need to do it in a very lean way. And so getting our teams thinking not about, all the things that we were thinking about when we were launching sotrovimab, but rather thinking about how to, do absolutely the right amount of work and generate the right data to support the advancement of both these sets of modalities, and at the same time, thinking about the long-term viability of the company as we try and do that within a fairly short time frame. So a lot of kind of puts and takes on both ends, and definitely an interesting time, particularly given some of the changes that we're seeing around us.
For sure. Thank you. Tina.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I am alive and kicking.
Good. Tina Self. I am Senior Vice President of Global Biologics Manufacturing at Bayer, and also the site head at the Berkeley site. Invite anybody who wants to come and see us. We've got 46 acres out there. And it's interesting, I think about hearing the challenges that each of you had shared, and I ditto. But I think the way that I'm looking at things, especially from Bayer, it's a really transformative time now. I'm looking at challenges with more opportunities. And as you may or may not know, Bayer is going through this huge transformation where we are changing the entire way that we do business, that we do work. It's called dynamic shared ownership. And, ideally what that does is really empower the frontline teams to own the business, drive the business, make the decisions, and reduce bureaucracy. Minimizing the end levels and expanding your span of coaching. And it's a very, very different approach than normal hierarchical, this is what you do. And that's challenging because it's significantly different than what people are used to, and trying to equate what you look at as development or opportunities in the future with a much more flat organization, with the opportunities that you have to really completely diversify yourself and learn new things and be an integral part of a team that is in charge and accountable for delivering. It's an interesting dynamic of discussion. And this isn't just in the U.S. This is an entire Bayer organization across crop science, consumer health, and the pharma division. So it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. I think the second one is that we're a smaller portion. So Bayer's obviously a large company. The biologics arm is a smaller portion of that. But we've really done a lot of investment in the Berkeley site and also in our Wuppertal, Germany site to be able to bring in cell therapy. And we've got some partners that we're working with that we're really excited about. But thinking about what you're talking about, trying to bring these really fantastic products to patients in a regulatory environment that is not laid out like we're used to for bringing a mAb, and having people understand that you can think differently and we can challenge the status quo. It's hard because, again, you're kind of programmed in this space. So those are probably two of the challenges and opportunities. I will say one challenge, and I'm having a harder time finding the opportunity in this, is that we are going to be rolling out a company-wide SAP. Yes, and so I'm sure once it's done, it's going to be fantastic. But I've been through a couple of those, and they're kind of painful.
SAP rollouts are like renovating your kitchen. On time and on budget is a rare thing.
Yeah.
If you think of those challenges, and we'll go back around, but of the main challenges you're facing, if you were to pinpoint one talent implication that if you could snap your finger or use a magic wand that you could resolve, what's the from a talent, either development or acquisition?
Yeah.
What's the toughest thing you have to deal with from a talent perspective these days?
Yeah, I think it's because of the DSO, the dynamic shared ownership, is equating to somebody that's already in the company. What is that development dialogue that you have? What's that pathway? So it's not a typical career ladder anymore. It's much more broad spectrum versus, how do we think we're successful in the typical hierarchical company is, I eventually become a manager, and then I have a small group of people, and then I'm another manager at my scope of responsibility and people. That's what I think is success and development. And having the conversation to say it's not about, your job title and your salary is not based on the size of your team anymore or what your level in the organization is. It's based on how you deliver results, how you upskill yourself to be able to be deployed it's a hard conversation. Again, could you switch that? The second thing is then trying to attract talent from the outside as we think about the new job titles, the new job descriptions that we have. Again, it doesn't fit into what you see on Indeed or Fierce Bio or anything. It's how can we, in those job descriptions, and then subsequently during the interviews when we're talking about how great it is to come and work at Bayer, how do we have people see how they can show up and be successful at the company with this, pretty diametric.
It sounds like almost like a culture transformation.
It's a huge culture transformation. It's a fast culture transformation. We started the journey, I would say, at the beginning of the year, and in the product supply organization, which is what I'm part of, we expect to have the organization completely in place by the end of this year, and that is ahead of some of the other things that you think that you need. Well, you have an organization. Oh, great. Well, how does this costing goes? How does finance go? How does HR systems reflect this new way of working? And Bill Anderson, our CEO, has been, those are going to lag. But it's really not about the systems. It's about the people, empowering the people, making sure they have the skill sets, the tools and stuff that they need. The rest of that will follow. Yeah. And I find that scary, but yes, also very, very exciting. I mean, I personally feel empowered to take decisions that previously I might need to, bring up the flagpole.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Chris and Anya, when I think of what Jerry and Tongtong were sharing, where product diversification, technology diversification was going to bring the next challenges, in both of your cases, what I heard had to do with declining resources and a sort of needed acceleration into and delivery, if you wish. So from a talent perspective, what does that mean for you? Maybe start with you, Anya, and then Chris.
It's a very astute observation as you listen to all of us to see the difference between large pharma and small pharma when it comes to talent. You really want to make sure you have the domain experts in place to cover all the disciplines across technical operations. But at the same time, you want those domain experts to be versatile such that they can jump into other roles, whether they be, product strategy roles or project management roles, or even supporting third-party interactions and partnerships. So I think it's a very versatile individual, but having the fundamental domain expertise is the most important. And in fact, that's what you hire for. And then in that hiring, you're listening for those attributes that indicate these individuals have a tolerance with ambiguity and have a flexibility and a resilience that can actually take on some of these other things as they get presented. And for those individuals that see that as an opportunity, it truly is. In a smaller company, you have people who, hop from process development to manufacturing to product strategy and even quality. We have a recent case where there's an individual and he's been in project management for a number of years, and he wanted to get back into the business. He's now jumping into quality as a place where he wants to, gain some more expertise. So it's a differentiating opportunity to really give talent a chance to grow as much as it is serving the business at a time of need.
I fully agree. And, I think it's tricky, especially in recruiting, because we're trying to find these unicorns, right, who have all the experience, maybe even their senior folks, cell therapy, CBER, they've taken something all the way to BLA. But then we're asking them to work in a very small company, right, where you don't want them to get bored or feel like it is too small. We're also asking them to roll up their sleeves and actually do work themselves, where maybe they have gone beyond that in their careers and have had teams doing it for them. So, I'm really looking for folks who follow, I do what it takes versus I do what I'm told, right? So entrepreneurial spirit and rolling up your sleeves, even beyond tech ops, right? We have folks who have experience in the clinical setting. So they're helping out with the product when it goes into the infusion centers. And it's really, I think, the second part of the challenge is once you have these unicorns on board, how do you keep them growing and developing?
And I think as well as going across the disciplines, you're expecting some of these people to be able to dial up and dial down. So they may be in front of the board presenting the manufacturing strategy. The next day, they're writing a section in an IND filing. And so been comfortable to, roll sleeves up, for some critical activities, but at the same time, have the wisdom and the maturity to be able to, have strategic conversations. And that is, that takes a skill and also an ambition of an individual to be able to do that.
One thing I just want to add to this, because it came into mind, something that I had to personally accept as we're rolling these changes out, that not everybody is going to want to work. Right. And we're going to lose good talent because it's not a good fit with what they're looking for. And so as I think back, especially as I started out, it was a big company, but a very small, and I did so many things that really drove me to want to learn and kind of do different things. This environment, the startup environment, with the right person is fantastic. And that's who you have to target. And it's, not everybody's going to want to do that. Not everybody's going to want to come and do it right. So I think the talent topic is universal. It's not really about small company and large company. I feel I don't know about Jerry, for you and I, we have to cultivate a system where you can systematically actually have opportunity for talents to be, emerged, so they can be continue to challenge, to take account great opportunities and to see end to end. Because if they only stay where their function is, their view is always going to be limited, right? And I'm truly a believer that, innovation is at the interface place. And is where your creative solution is created when you actually begin to understand what's other people's needs and the customer needs and patients' needs as well. So for me, I think it's a huge opportunity for us to continue to focus on how you grow that cross-functional leadership in the tech op CMC area. So I think, Jerry, you have done pretty successfully, I know. And even have your leaders, right? And to be rotating amongst themselves. I think leaders are role models as well.
Our way of working has really changed. COVID really just blew it open, and we've never really come back. We're still in this hybrid workforce, and people don't have the same connection and the way things used to get done in the hallway conversations or things like that. A lot of that is not the same. And there are people who are struggling with that human connection and being able to come to work in an environment that they were used to. And then on top of that, our digital structure inside is changing rapidly, really evolving. Like AI is just, and all of those tools are everywhere. And so one challenge that we're seeing is, one, upskilling talent to be able to use the tools, because they need to be able to use the tools to contribute in that environment. And the time to contribution of new hires is getting longer and longer. In order to train somebody to be able to work in a GMP environment with our very complex systems now takes, up to 6 months for somebody to be able to be trained enough where they can contribute in a meaningful way, given the complexity of the systems. The good news is that once you're in that system, an individual employee is way more productive than they ever were before, because the tools can do so many things for you. It can write things for you. It can do things for you. All of that's a real plus. We've got to solve this time to contribution thing. And then we need to figure out, how do you create that human connection? We still get a lot of feedback of missing that connection, the ways of working, which used to be much more human than human, seeing somebody at the coffee place or walking down or in the hallway, the water cooler kind of stuff. That's happening much less frequently. People are coming to work when they need to do work, but they're not just sitting around idle time. Like if there's idle time at work, they go home. And that's kind of a very flexible work arrangement that people like, but it does create a sort of vacuum in what used to be that office hour time. So I think that's a challenge in the new workforce that we're dealing with, both with new hires and with people who've been around for a while. How do you get work done? It's just very, very different than it was before.
We are starting to observe across industries that organizations or people that show up more in person develop faster, learn more and faster than people that show up less. And that's not in our industry, but across industries. Does that surprise you?
No.
No. The way I look at it is, let's say if my children enter into the workforce today, and where we want to put them into learning, the best learning curve. I think it's in the workplace that you actually have to have a mentor and coach side by you, right? So just imagine that. I think the tools will be there. And I also think Tony's question yesterday was very good, is that the curiosity needs to be there to discover and to be curious of what you're exactly working on, not just the automation that spits out the numbers for you at the moment, right? So
I think, individuals who have that curiosity and want to go into the workplace and want to interact with people are actually wanting to do more than their core job. Yeah. And that's why I think what you're observing is, potentially those individuals progressing more quickly. There's another side to it, which is they're more visible and therefore they're seen to be more maybe ambitious or maybe even more impactful because they're in the workplace. And I think we're reading lots of articles about different companies taking different approaches, from Amazon to Amgen and everything in between. I think the jury is out on what's perfect. I think we have to recognize that some companies, because of their maturity, need more of that in-person interaction than a company that has and is very well established and doesn't need to rely on it quite so much. So it's a very interesting topic and an interesting space.
I also think it depends on the role that the person is doing, because in general, I mean, obviously if you're a manufacturer, you can't work remote and you got to show up. But when I think about some of the other support functions, like deviation writing, conformance writing, we've actually seen quite an increase in output and also time to be able to contribute, because they're more comfortable in their quiet space at home, no distractions, in focusing. So I do also think the role and the experience that the person brings in could also influence that, time to contribution factors.
Right. Tong, you sparked a thought in my head. So we're going to play a game. And a rapid fire question. Don't think about it. Give me the answer one after the other. Jerry, finish the sentence. I would advise my 21-year-old to get into the biotech industry because
the pace of technology evolution is as fast as it's ever been, and it's going to change the world.
Tong, I would advise my 21-year-old to get into the biotech industry because?
Yeah, it's the impact they're going to be able to actually make, but leveraging everything that is happening across. Yeah.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, it's going to get repetitive. It's the patient impact.
Okay, then let's change the game. Chris, I would not advise my 21-year-old to get into the biotech industry because...
I really think it's a great industry, so I wouldn't be in it. Yeah. It depends on where their passion is, though, right? You can't force somebody into an industry that doesn't match what their natural abilities or inclinations are. But I'll go against that. I think the biotech industry offers a lot of different roles that can play to folks' strengths, no matter what. It's a challenge. So I think folks who like problem solving and like a challenge especially that could result in a breakthrough for patients, it's a fantastic place to work.
The purpose is hard to beat. How about you?
Yeah, I'm all about purpose, and my 16-year-old sees it already. Sees that actually, doing a job where there's immediate impact, just is motivating, and I think those individuals who are more introverted, can quietly work in their own way and still make the impact. And no matter what role you have in this industry, it's a global industry that's very exciting, and it's so complex and diverse, and the number of different modalities we're working on. There's nothing that I know that has changed so rapidly with such a big impact in my, almost 30-year career.
Let's say you, Tina.
I'll just put it as of course, ditto for all that. But for me, what makes this time in biotech the most exciting is that we're really on the cusp of moving from treatment to potential cure. And that is really different, especially in the cell therapy and gene therapy space, where we can fix and eliminate, in some cases, these horrible things that people and patients have to deal with. So that's why, to me, this is just probably was the same back when MABs came in. And everybody's like, oh, MABs, but I think cell and gene therapy is really going to kind of blow that out of the water even more.
Interesting. Let's go back to you, Jerry. And you're always my test case here. So think about the different skills and qualities and leadership requirements that we've been talking about, both in this room right now, but also in the different with the different speakers that we've had. If you had to bring your next talent to your organization, but they were to come from a different industry, which one would intrigue you the most? Where would you like this next person to come from?
I mean, it's going to sound repetitive, but from the tech industry and the understanding digital technologies and how that can play. In fact, we have hired some people from completely different industries who know how to apply tech solutions to solve problems in general. They don't understand biotech. They don't understand what we're trying to solve, but they know how to apply tools like machine learning and AI to solve problems. And they're making a big difference because I think, we don't know what we don't know, and we have a certain way of doing things. And, they're completely turning that on its head. And I think this digital revolution that's happening is going to change our industry permanently. I really, really feel that. It's different from anything else that I've ever seen.
Do you agree with that, Tong?
I agree. And if I would have to bring a talent, I would say I want to bring someone who is truly a system thinker and really thinking beyond our own industry, who can actually integrate all the technology and talents together to make it happen.
That's a very interesting thought. Systems thinker. Chris, where would you get that person?
Yeah, I think it depends on the role. I think there have been really successful folks, for example, in the validation space that come from the nuclear Navy, as an example, where you have to be efficient on a submarine, but you also have to follow rules and protocols. So looking outside the industry does provide a different way of thinking. I think sometimes we do things the same way, and so we don't see the opportunity. I'm reminded of what Samsung Biologics was able to do when they broke into the drug substance manufacturing. They built a plant in 18 months. And was believed it could be. And they did it, and it was world class. So, and they applied a lot of what they did in the semiconductor fab design and construction world. So I think that's going to continue to be important for us to keep our eyes open for opportunities in different industries.
20 years ago, when I worked at a facility startup in Ireland, we hired people from Nextdoor Tech, Intel at the time, and those individuals brought incredible insights to our supply chain business, to our process engineering business, so many different aspects. And I think in some ways we're outpacing that ourselves now. And I think the pace at which technology has advanced and what we're using, and at Vir, and Jerry, you mentioned some of this morning, but we're looking at automating our regulatory writing, and that is such an amazing transformation of a skill and a discipline that we never imagined could be transformed in the way that it is today. So for me, like Jerry and others, tech is the place where I think those skills we can teach people, and the biology and the fundamentals of how to develop a drug, but having some other perspectives from a tech background.
And we see talent are demanding that. So, a lot of the young talent we're bringing in, they want very high quality systems and capabilities. And you show them a dumb system that, they have to go to do change control in, and they're like, why would you possibly make me work in that system? It's not intuitive. Because they're used to very, very, half of my group are millennials. and they want very advanced technology. They want to work in very advanced technology, and they don't really have a whole lot of patience for non-intuitive old systems.
They don't want to wait for data.
They don't want to wait, and they're very vocal about what their needs are as well. And they will, I think back in my generation, there was just kind of, just deal with it, and don't complain. That's not the new generation. The new generation is there's a better way to do this, and I want that. And they have high expectations. Like when they join our company, they're expecting, hey, I'm joining your company because I'm expecting that you are a progressive, technology-first company, and and I want the best. And when they don't have it, they let you know. Which is really it's a different generation. It's a different way of thinking about how to work with employees and how they want to work.
I think that whole millennial and how you reward and recognize them and their expectations, that can be a separate entire roundtable. Yeah, in my mind, thank you. Oh, yeah. I think I'm a millennial, but apparently I'm not.
The mindset is important in this.
Yeah. Yes. And I wouldn't add anything else. I mean, I think the tech, maybe not from a different industry, but, because where we are at Bayer going through this transformation and trying to modify the culture is really optimistic people, forward-looking people, not somebody that kind of gets stuck in. And sometimes you need those kind of this Star Wars or whatever to kind of just keep the business going, and that's okay. But when you really are on this hill, you climb this hill to redefine your culture. Having majority of people that can really look forward and see what it's going to be on the other side of this change is really important.
As some of you actually perhaps know or enjoy, Formula One is to the automotive industry what cell and gene perhaps is to our industry. It's the leading edge, the novel science, the machine learning and disruptive technologies applied to trying to get that 0.1 second per lap to win the race. It's the lineage. So tomorrow I'll be interviewing an outgoing Formula One CEO so that we hear from another industry how he has led that team to progress and to win its first racing years, et cetera, et cetera. But if there was one question you wanted to make sure I ask him tomorrow on leading the top of the class industry, what question would that be? What question would be of interest to you, Tina?
I would say, it kind of goes back to rewards, recognition, and motivation of the team. So how did you hold the teams accountable, drive them, give them the ability or the experiment to try and fail? How did you reward those failures? And what's the duration? How long did you allow something to go before it was cut bait? Because this whole try to fail or try to win, play to fail, whatever you want to call it, it's really important because that causes or allows people to push the boundaries. But there's always this concern of if I fail, then I'm not going to get a good performance review or I'm not. So that how do you reward and recognize those talents that really do push the boundaries and take risks, appropriately compliant risks going forward?
Okay.
How do you go from good to great?
From good to great.
And clearly, the journey that this team has been through and is one which, brought a whole team together to be winners. And so I'd just love to hear his perspective on what was that differentiating capability or, unique moment that triggered the winning team.
I think what's the feedback loop to take those innovations and put them back into the mainstream business so that becomes the new baseline? How do they make sure those breakthroughs and innovations in Formula One go back to the assembly line?
Okay, that's a good one. Tom?
Maybe very similar is obviously Formula One is a very high-performing team. So how does he continue to cultivate that winning competitive edge to continue to be the high-performing team?
That's a very good question. Jerry?
Something around culture, I think, is what I would be interested in. Like, what is their culture? How would you describe it? What do they prioritize as their hierarchy? Like, what is their number one leadership attribute or thing that they hold the dearest that they think is the key to that? We talk a lot about culture at Amgen, not only for what we're doing today, but how do we make sure that that culture remains through the staff that we're bringing in, and that we maintain that with a focus on our aspiration to serve patients and make sure that that culture is there. I'm just curious as to, what are the cultural aspects inside of those high-performing teams, and how would he describe?
In that sentence, how do you define culture? What do you mean when you say culture?
The things that you hold as most important, regardless of whatever happens. Safety, quality, compliance is always number one at Amgen. And you can walk around anywhere at Amgen and ask anybody, and they'll tell you right away. Quality is number one. We are known as a high-quality provider. We will never do anything that would cut that. And then innovation is the next thing. Those are the things that everywhere around the company are always prioritized, and you can feel it and see it in the hallways.
I was asking him, so this is Laurent Rossi from Alpine Formula One. He's been out of his role for a year now. I was having dinner with him recently, and I was asking him, how is it possible that McLaren all of a sudden catches up and it becomes a contender? In fact, the number one pilot, but they're the number one team, total points. And I said, what would you do differently now that you see how McLaren's operating? What have you learned? And I'll be asking you a similar question in 1 second. But he said, we were making decisions at the highest point of power. When there's a problem, even during the race, it goes up to the top. That's where the decision is made. At McLaren, during the race, they have 140 people in the factory analyzing the data, and the decision is made at the highest point of knowledge. So if she, the front wing aerodynamics engineer, 27 years old, is at her desk, and that's what the problem is, she will make the decision on whether we change the wing or not, which I thought was like, oh, that's a really interesting lesson. How do you react to decisions at the highest point of power or highest point of knowledge? What's your gut telling you about your organization today? And
well, I'll just start because when you said that, it just warmed my heart, because I feel like that's what we're trying to get to. And it's the people that have the right information, the right knowledge to make the decision, and it's not the hierarchical, you've got to go to my boss. So hearing that it's very, I'm going to steal it, if you don't mind, and bring it back and explain, what it looks like, because it's hard to talk about when you empower frontline teams or you're empowering decision-making at the right level. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to show. And that's a fantastic example that can be leveraged to show.
I think one element maybe I can insert is, I think the power of knowledge is very key, because it's really down to the people capabilities. I think we all want to empower the team, whether it's a dynamic ownership or whether it's to empower the team decisions. But we as leaders do have the accountability to ensure the people are at the point have the right capability to make that decision. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's our ownership.
Mm-hmm. Right person in the right role.
He's going to be with us for at the reception at the end of the day. So if you want to discuss, and he's a bit wondering, how am I going to fit in with this group of scientists? So I'm trying to reassure him.
There's lots of overlap. I love the concept as well, as Tina expressed it really clearly, how relevant it is. I think in a small environment, in a small company or mid-sized company, it's very easy for us to know who's got the knowledge, and you can go to people, you can build the relationships, you can learn, you can understand. I think it becomes more challenging in larger organizations. So I'd love to hear from him in a team of 140. How is it so clear, who is that domain expert? And how do you get to it fast? And how do you get to it in a way that's empowering, not just for that individual, but for everyone else? Because, of course, it's the right thing to do. But I think we get sometimes kind of tied up in our own bureaucracy, such that we don't always know. Personally, my way of getting to know the organization is skip levels and meeting people, and suddenly you just build that level of confidence through conversations, and over time you get there. But is there a way that you get there systematically, and how do Formula One teams optimize it in a very impactful way?
Now that I know he's coming, I have a selfish question that I'll ask him tonight, because I will be going to see Formula One in Vegas in just a few days. And so I'm gonna ask him if he has any VIP skis or acts, for the scientists, so we can learn how that works.
We'll discuss how he left Alpine first. Brandon will be part of the answer to your question, which is the very first lesson in leadership from that infamous book called The 48 Laws of Power. If you haven't read it, if you're going to read only one book about leadership, this is actually a PhD dissertation about a study of all of the military, economical, political battles over the last several centuries, and why were they won or lost, and what's the lesson. So it's always theory supported by actual storytelling. And law number one is never outshine the master. Don't make your boss look bad in exchange for yourself looking good. So anyways, back to that in a second. I asked him also, because you brought it up, and we've sort of tiptoed around it, but I want to take a deeper dive into it. I asked him, when did you know that McLaren was on the comeback? When did you know there was trouble? And Laurent is an ex-Google senior executive. If you don't know, he was leading the automotive segment of Google for 8 years, I believe, in New York. And he said preseason testing 4 years ago, that's the first time you see the new livery for your competitors, you see the new cars, you see the new design, the way. And he said the Google logo was on the McLaren cars. Google has never done a deal to expose itself on any performance sports. And oops, we now knew that the entire machine learning and disruptive technologies power of Google was behind McLaren. And everyone was like, oh, no, we're way behind. So we say AI, we say machine learning, but how concretely are you gaining an advantage leveraging the new technologies in your business, if you are doing it at all? Let's start with you this time around, because Jerry always gets the first answer.
Start with Chris and go.
Oh, good idea. Chris, you go first.
Well,
good idea.
The answer for us is we're not yet. We have one asset. We have to get it into the clinic. So we don't have necessarily the luxury of investing in AI at this point. We are looking at it on more basic things like regulatory writing, even just helping with summarizing emails and making people a little bit more efficient so that we can keep our costs under control. So unfortunately, the one thing we are doing, I guess, is we're building a data warehouse, data lake, some people want to call it. But for cell therapy, it's really important to try to connect the data end to end, from research and preclinical all the way to translational and clinical outcomes. So that's something we are investing in, but not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. Yes. Okay. So it's a tool that's available if you have capital.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, small companies in an investment-constrained environment need to really prioritize. For sure, yeah.
We're actually deep in using AI machine learning to help design our antibodies, design our molecules. We have some in-house and off-the-shelf algorithms we're using. We call it DAISY, DAISY. And that's been a really powerful tool to ensure that the molecule we're receiving in process development and the manufacturability and developability considerations we have to have the right attributes at the beginning are in place, so that we don't lose time later on if there's, stability issue or shelf life issue with something that didn't go through that repeated assessment of, defining the right attributes for the target product profile. So that's been a big focus for us. And then in process development, we're more about ensuring that we're capturing data. We don't have a lot of products, like larger companies, but capturing data, because if you can't access data in a structured way, then you can't even begin to think about more sophisticated ways to use that data.
Tonton?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to speak to this a little bit. And second, I'm going to talk about that is, so if you know, Aviv Regev actually leads our GRED discovery. She's a computational biologist, and she's actually building quite a bit about how it's called the lab in the loop, right? So it's really using machine learning and AI to help the discovery. But we actually collaborate with them very closely, as Anya said, to making sure we provide in silico modeling, in silico developability to ensure we have molecules coming to us, don't have CMC liabilities, right? So that's very exciting. But I think from enterprise point of view, we actually made several decisions. One is Tina, SAP, end-to-end SAP system. By next year, we will actually roll out everything to every size. So that's very exciting. And because then you actually have the material flow and goods flow and data flow. The other big decision we made this year is actually we are consolidating 11 different electronic notebook into one platform. Can you imagine?
I did that.
Can you imagine? Right? So this is unprecedented. So I would say fundamentally, we want to invest in data foundations to making sure we can play at scale. Today, we are not. So that's absolutely you need to happen. In terms of Gen I think we need to build real good business user cases. And one thing that I learned last week is, AI, we need to leverage for problem solving that the human cannot solve, right? So what are the biggest opportunities for Roche and for Genentech that we want to leverage? Obviously, in manufacturing, how you leverage machine learning for the data, for the yield improvement that's there. And for us, intelligent authoring for BLA filing is there for a few years already. So we have successful user cases. But I think we need to do more for sure, especially end-to-end.
Yeah, the AlphaFold technology that won the Nobel Prize is now available. And we're making a lot of what I would call hybrid modalities that involve maybe an antibody, but with conjugation and different things associated with them, conjugating siRNAs onto antibodies or peptides, and being able to predict those structures is game-changing. Just a few years ago, the only way you would even have a sense of whether you could make something and whether it'd be stable is you would make it and find out. We now have the capabilities to be able to, either through partners or with our own off-the-shelf capabilities, to make molecules in silico and see how they'll behave. And it's very predictive. And that's game-changing. That saves us, months and months of wet lab work to basically think of 12 different things you could do, but then boil it down to the one that actually is predicted to work. So that's game-changing. It saves us a lot of time, saves us a lot of money. More tactically, the AI tools, what we've found is authoring, writing things, and planning things, it's very, very good at. It can do a lot more, but you have to be much more advanced as a user to get it to really do those things. But almost anybody can get it to write things for them, to become editors and not authors. And if you look at what are the humans doing, we did this whole study of what are people spending their time on. And a lot of people spend a lot of time taking data from a technical document or lab notebooks or whatever have you, from manufacturing batch records or QC data, and moving that into another system or template. All of the data that we have go to two very important places. One, regulatory files, and two, manufacturing tech transfers. And they're different systems with different destinations, and the source data comes from different places. And a lot of people spend a lot of time getting that information from the source systems to then put it into the destination systems. And so linking those together, where we have this data fabric, data lake, or whatever you want to call it, that can pull the data from there and auto-populate into these destinations. That saves people a lot of time so that they're not sitting down with an otherwise blank sheet of paper and starting to move information. And then the other thing is we get asked a lot of questions by regulators. When we file an IND or a BLA, it's not uncommon that we will get literally over 100 questions back around the data that we have. We now have all of the questions that we've received over the last decade all in an AI system, so that as soon as we receive a set of questions back from a regulatory agency, the system automatically auto-populates a response back. So the first time the team sits down, they're basically reading the response that has been authored back to the agency. Whereas even just a year ago, the team would sit down with the 120 list of questions and say, okay, the first question's about product quality. Johnny, you take that one, and this one's about validation. You take that one, and that's kind of how it would go. That's completely changed overnight because of these tools that we have.
And
How about you, Tam?
I'd say we're probably a little behind where we'd like to be. We definitely have a team that's focused on digitalization. We've got our own internal in-house AI program. We've used it for some things with the writing, putting presentations together, summarizing data for non-GMP decisions. But we've actually been focusing a lot on the training and the just knowledge of what that tool is. Because to your point, if somebody doesn't know how to use it, it's not useful. Sometimes it could be dangerous if you don't use it the right way. So really just trying to bring everybody along the way to say, here's what's available, here's what it can do, here's what you're allowed to use it for, here's what you can't. We've done a little bit of testing with some predictive analysis for investigations and those type of things. Based on all the data that we've put in there from previous investigations, deviations, what would be predictive of the root cause analysis, and then we're kind of calibrating that against the formal FMEA or RBI that we're doing to see what that is, and then feeding that back into the system. And what we've seen now is we're starting to get closer and closer. So it's not going to replace it, but it certainly helps with the confirmatory aspect. And then even things like APRs and putting all that together and being able to just have it pulled it saves just a tremendous amount of resources.
Yeah, since we're at a manufacturing summit, I should add that we've actually leveraged AI algorithms to help us, hone in on parameters in manufacturing that are contributing to high yield. So principal component analysis. And that actually, when we were manufacturing sotrovimab, and delivered a 10% yield in our drug substance production, which is enormous when you're in that commercial space. So our amazing process engineers across the industry are those individuals who are the key to that opportunity, and definitely one which I think is only going to get even better as we go forward with these algorithms.
Answering this question beyond manufacturing, two of the responses that I thought were interesting, one that applies to us, and I'll get to it in a second. One was in portfolio management, the leverage of AI to gather all of the information, all of the data points from clinical studies and otherwise, evaluations of different companies to help the M&A team jump faster to an acquisition or to double down on investment on a specific candidate, for example. So I thought that was interesting. The second one was development of a leveraged by AI S&OP loop, so that earlier you can tell that we're going to sell more here, less there, to Greg Geyer's presentation earlier today. And so it's a connection between market commercial data and right back to the capacity in my commercial plant, so that I know where I'm going to need more or less way earlier. Before I've produced a second batch, I know that I don't need it or not. Is there any intent, and of course it's more of a large organization question, but is there any intent to connect your function to the commercial reality out there?
Yeah, via our supply chain group and the S&OP systems, they're utilizing some very advanced models to try to interrogate the marketplace earlier, and payers, what are payers trending and how they're doing that. which gives us better, especially we have a very big biosimilar portfolio. And so understanding what is the innovator doing, how is this going to enter, what are payers going to do, who's going to be willing to take on a biosimilar is usually a very dynamic process. And I think the last 2 biosimilars we launched were much more predictable because we were able to predict what was happening out in the market. Whereas previously, we really were sort of guessing about, well, we're the 3rd biosimilar in this area. These 2 are doing this, so maybe we'll fall somewhere in between. And instead, these last 2 were really based on intelligence coming from the marketplace via these tools. So that's been a little bit of a game.
Even before commercial and in clinical development, we're using real world data and predictive tools to determine where patient populations are to ensure that we have, rapid enrollment during clinical trials. So I think right across the business, I think there's definitely a game changer, going on to those.
Yeah, to that, we've recently got into rare disease, and there's a couple of clinical trials we have where there's very rare disease, like there's literally a handful of patients around the world, and utilizing that to find out where to even open up sites so that you could gain access to patients has been a use of tools that I've seen really be transformative.
Yeah, I would say we're keen to get more sophisticated in that area, and in clinical, definitely we want to be really closer to the clinical operations and clinical studies to anticipate where the patient's enrollment will be so we can actually supply, because we end up with lots of drug wastage otherwise.
Yes.
So that's actually been one of the initiatives, and I will touch a little bit today as well, is we have a lot of opportunities, and if we really care about reduce drug development cost and reduce the drug wastage, and there's a lot of opportunity to get better into anticipate the enrollment and actually to do that just in the clinical space. I'm sure in the commercial, it's the same. How the commercial team be able to leverage the market data to give us the real pulse in terms of supply and demand, and that's going to be huge. Yeah, for us.
Yes, I agree.
And I think we are, and we're reimagining, that's our term for how we do IBP and S&OP and forecasting. And because we, one of the things that we know we need to do better about is forecast accuracy, because to your point, if you make to what you think you're going to sell and then you make too much and you've got your inventory carry costs, and then it's just then you don't make as much the next year, and then your utilization goes down. So everything's just tied together. So taking a look at how all those play in together of how can we improve the forecast accuracy? How can we right size the safety stock that we have? How do we optimize the WIP so that we can feed this in a much more cost-effective way? Is something that we're taking a look at. Not implemented yet, but it's definitely on the table for evaluation.
One last question, perhaps. There's a comment that was made earlier today about how 30 years ago, as operators, we were not an afterthought, but we'd be told to do what we're supposed to do, and we'll let you know when we want your opinion. We'll give it to you, kind of situation. No one said that, and I just said that. Whereas today, we show up at the board, which is a different game altogether. What have you learned? What's important? What advice would you have to CTOs or tech ops or manufacturing leaders that are going to their first board meeting? What's the advice you would have for that person? Let's start with you, Tom.
I'm going to have to pass out. I have to give some thoughts about this. Yeah.
Tom, we'll think about it. At Veer, you went from not going often to the board before to always at the board. So tell us, what have you learned?
What about the money? So because beer is so reliant on third parties, we need to obviously be very transparent about our opportunities and roadblocks. The other really important thing is CMC needs to be ready 2 years ahead of everyone else when it comes to thinking about launching products. And that puts you in a very vulnerable place because you don't have all the right information 2 years ahead of launch. And just as we talked about, the demand fluctuations, we need to be building in some flexibility, some scenarios in order to be able to pivot if needed or necessary. And these large dollars are expected to be committed to the third parties in advance as well. And so it's all about ensuring that you're clear about the drivers for the business, clear about the timelines and the risks associated with this early investment. That's super important. And so it's a little bit of a lesson in tech ops and holding hands around the table, ensuring everyone's bought into making these investments so early, knowing that there could be some inevitable changes afoot that again, we all need to deal with.
Can you relate to that?
Yeah, for sure. In cell therapy, tech ops is front and center often. And, I think it can be a different skill set for tech ops professionals to be able to communicate crisply at a board level. The board is not usually well-versed in what tech ops does, but they also don't have time to go down a rat hole of 10 slides on the gory details. So it's really a skill of how do you distill that into a short presentation that hits on risk as well. I think being able to articulate what the risks are in a pragmatic way, not a scary way, right?
You're telling a story, really, about the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but communication, I think tech ops stereotype are people who are more technical, more introverted, and, really can communicate well with like minds, but the board tends to operate at a much more strategic level. But I view that as a really fun opportunity, right, for me and for my team to learn and grow in that area.
Yeah, I agree. My advice would be concise and answer the question that's being asked. Not what you want to talk about. Read the room and understand the question that's being asked. Generally when I go to the board, it's a 20 or 30 minute segment that we're being asked something very specific to present on and talk about risk, cost, what's the outcome. And if you looked at that 20 or 30 minutes of time, I probably speak total 5 minutes. 5 minutes total. That's setting the context, saying what it is, and then answering a few questions. And being able to get your points in that short period of time and doing it in a way that's concise enough for the board, because they don't want a dissertation. They don't want to hear a lot of things. They want to understand, as a board, what risk are we taking here? What is the value proposition? What is the overall return that we're going to get? And being able to do that in a very concise way, get you out of there. Which what you want, going to the board is like going to the orthodontist. It's going to hurt. And the best thing you can hope for is no blood and to get out of there as soon as you can. And what you really want, as you're preparing for the board and you're thinking about it, you're playing it through in your mind. What you want is to be able to give them a clear understanding of what you're talking about, tell them what the ask is, and get them to say, we understand it, we support you, go do that, and you walk out the door, you've got your approval, and you do that. And that's the best outcome you can possibly get to. You start meandering around and you start going into a lot of complex discussions, and then you get sent out the room with a bunch of action items, not a decision. You've just created more work for yourself and your organization, and it's not the best outcome. So be concise, answer the question that's being asked.
It feels like that's the same advice you give when you're getting an audit, right? And maybe because I love that answer and I 100% agree. Maybe the other, whether it's a board meeting or any meeting you're going into, know your audience, know the potential landmines. There's going to be probably somebody that's really has this tremendous financial acumen that you might need to have those numbers in your head, or maybe you just have somebody that's always negative and you have to think about how you're going to approach and respond in that place. So knowing your audience and modifying your style, your presentation to target that is I found to be very helpful.
Read the room.
Yeah.
Any final words, Tong Tong, on this one?
Well, I think everyone said, well, understand your audience. But I think when you're going in, you really have to making sure to give a really balanced view and really put the head of a corporation.
Yeah.
Right. Not just for your organization, for function. So if you can speak a bigger value, it's better.
Enterprise leadership. Yeah, I like that. That's wonderful.
I know you're all extremely busy, and so I just want to thank you on behalf of anyone who's going to be watching our conversation for taking the time this afternoon. Thank you.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. Thanks for joining us.